Remember Nick Swisher? He called him once jolly old Saint Nick. And up comes Swisher to the back of the plane and said, I don't like that. I'm not jolly old Saint. That's where Swishalicious came from, because John changed it for that. Austin Robine came up and said, I need one. And that's where he got Roaming My Hobie. And when he hit his home runs. But players wanted it, and it never started that way. It was supposed to be just special, and it came from, he didn't have to think. That came out. Benny Byrne, he never thought about that. It just came out.
Did you guys have chemistry right away, you think?
Oh, God, yes. I mean, we were friends. This is like my brother. I mean, I've known him 40 years. We were friends from that first day I met him, because I just thought he was interesting. We liked the same shows. We liked the same books. We talked the same language. We came from the same generation. We were educated the same way. So when he said something, I understood what he meant. No, this was pretty special. And by the way, if it weren't for John, I wouldn't have gotten this job. Because when people were saying you can't have a woman do Yankees radio, George came over and said, well, what do you think of this, a woman? He said, I think a woman is wonderful as long as it's this woman. Go ahead and hire her. And he did that also with Michael Kay. Michael Kay, a lot of people wanted that job. A lot of players wanted that job. And John said to George, this is who I want. So both of us owe him a lot.
You have a background as a performer. Did that give you a special appreciation for John's kind of touch as a showman?
Yes. Because I am too. So I understood that a lot. And I think he understood to whom we were speaking. We were doing Yankee games for Yankee fans. Most of them are pretty sophisticated. And they loved it. They loved it. We'd go out, people say, well, John was this and John was that. John would say on the radio where we were going to dinner. And 50 people would show up with their little kids. Brian, do your call for John. Mr. Sterling, can you do this for my son? And they would all do Yankees win, Burn, baby, burn, little children. And so he was a showman and he knew it, but he knew where he was.
A lot of sports radio in New York, they need stuff to talk about, and sometimes they talked about John Sterling. How did he take that? Did it bother him when people criticized him or called him out?
Yes. He was very emotional. See, John, I've said this before, John had no guile. He didn't understand it when people were mean to him, because he could never be mean to anybody. And he didn't know how to fight back, because that wasn't who he was. And he would say, well, I don't care what this guy said. He cared very much. But we were somewhere and we was reading something, and some little kid came up and he said, this is who I'm talking to. He knew that he was talking to the fans, and we'd go out and there were the fans. But yes, he was very emotional. He had very deep feelings about everything. And it hurt him very much, and I know that. He said he didn't care, but he did.
What do you feel like is a proper way for the organization to honor his legacy?
I don't know. I know they're having some kind of ceremony. I hope they at least have an armband. He was here 40 years, and I hope there's at least an armband or a patch. I don't know. I know they're having some kind of ceremony tonight, but I don't know.
What was John like off the field to you?
He was just like John. He was everything that's who he was. And I've said this before, he was like an older brother. We talked every day. I mean, we just, during the winter, we went to dinner. We talked about the same things. He'd call, the last call I got from him from the hospital, you know what was going on in Boston, what happened with Alex Cora. I mean, he left it on my landline and we weren't there, but he was there, and he, that was, I trust you, you have to know. So, but it was something. It was a very unique relationship. But I do want to say that this man is the only person I've ever met who did everything he ever wanted to do in his life, ever. And there's nothing that he didn't do. And he's proudest of his children who took care of him during this. Extraordinary. He raised, and don't forget, he was not with his wife, and those children adored him, and he was so proud of them that was his biggest accomplishment, and he would want everyone to know that. But I think this man lived life to the fullest. It should be a celebration, not a mourning thing. I mean, who lives their life like that and is able to accomplish everything? From the time he was 6 years old, this is what he wanted to do. And he did it, and for a very long time, he did it better than anybody.
Aaron, the Yankees family lost legendary broadcaster John Sterling today. Just how will you remember John?
One of a kind. An amazing career, an amazing life. The soundtrack for so many New Yorkers and Yankee fans over the years. For those of you who know me, I'm that kid that grew up loving baseball, nostalgic with falling asleep to a radio, listening to Harry Callis and Richie Ashburn. When I drive home on Saturday afternoon, I love to find a local game because I love listening to the game on the radio. And John was that guy. I know like a lot of Yankee fans, like there was anytime there was a big moment or a big game or something, like, man, I couldn't wait to get home and I want to hear how John called this. And just such a nice man. Like there's so many times, when we're traveling, the traveling party, we get in somewhere in the middle of the night, we're maybe going through a rough patch during the year or a good patch, and he'll pass on by me in the front row on the bus there and just say something sweet, funny, encouraging. And one of my favorite things is that to me embodies John is when the foul ball hit him in the booth and he just, ow. Like the boyish 6-year-old reaction that he just kind of spews out like, ow, I'm okay. Like, to me, encapsulates him so much. I've heard a lot of great tributes today. I listened to Suzyn talk about him. But just awesome. A giant in the sport, did it his own way, walked to his own beat as much as you can, and truly one of a kind. And a sad day, but also one where we get to celebrate an iconic figure.
You played here, obviously managing here. Did you have a favorite call over the years or one that really stood out to you?
When we win, right, I still do this. And my coaches look at me like I'm nuts. I don't even know if they know what I'm doing. But as soon as that final out is made and I get up to shake players' hands, I go, ball game over. Yankees win. Duh! Yankees win. And I've shaken all my coaches' hands. So I got goosebumps thinking about that. So I love that. I heard some great calls on the radio today. I mean, Jeter's 3,000 hit, the home run. Like, man, I heard that played back today. I'm like, man, what a great call that was. My home run in 03 was obviously Charlie Steiner called because it was an extra innings. And Suzyn once handed me a tape when I was with ESPN in for a game and said, John made a tape of him calling it, which is so John. Would you give this to Boone for me? So, it's a sad day. It is, but what a life and what an amazing character John was.
Did you listen to the tape? Did you keep the tape? What did you think of the tape?
I don't. In all honesty, I don't know where the tape is now. I'm sad to say, but I definitely listened to it. But just a neat guy.
Who else? John, Gary.
You mentioned a life growing up in baseball. I mean, obviously, the things that these guys can do are incredible, and that's what we fall in love with. How important is that connection of those voices that you grow up listening to in terms of creating, like, your own experience as a baseball fan, your life as a baseball fan?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's one of the favorite, and sorry to make it about me, but one of my favorite things I got to do at ESPN was the postseason on radio, because it's like a whole different skill and animal and just rhythm, where you're trying to paint pictures in this. Ooh, get out for the pitch. There's this just that is awesome, and I think living in the Northeast, and I'm a Northeasterner again. I'm proud to say, like, there's just something about the four seasons and how baseball ties into that, like spring and on into the summer, and the length and the marathon that is the baseball season, and just the romantic quality you have for a lot of fans listening to the radio and marking their summers and their season. That was me at a young age. I fell in love with listening to games on the radio, and I still love it. And John and Suzyn, for so many, have been that for the last umpteen years.
Gary.
Maybe it was that tape he made you, but do you have a favorite memory of John from your interactions with him or traveling with him on the team plane?
I don't know. I think it's those many times when he just, John was a little on the quirky side. And just, he'd call me Booney, hey Booney, and he just stopped with a lot of sweet comments getting on the bus. Again, sometimes when we're going through a tough time in the season or some really good times where he might, and just always a kind, supportive, quirky word for me. That's probably the biggest things I'll remember. And then I love his calls. I love it. And his voice, the theatrical way he did things, unlike anybody else. He was his own. He was an original. Never before, never will there probably be anyone like him the way he did it. So, and I appreciate that. And I ate it up. I loved it.
Randy, sorry.
When did you start doing the Yankees win? Was it when he retired?
It's been a couple years now. I don't know, but I've been doing it for a while.
And when you were playing, and now, did you go back and listen to the home run calls after the game, or was this something players would talk about, coaches would talk about?
I don't know when I played because I don't know you had the place to go just easily do that. Now I could go hear whatever I want post game. So, and I would do that so often with John. Anytime, we would have a big win. I'd get home. I got to hear how John called this or said this.
I think just how magnetic of a personality he was, how genuine he was when he would travel with us and we'd spend time with him, and it's just how objectively great he was at calling the games.
What do you think he meant to Yankees fans, especially with you being one as a child?
It's an interesting connection. We invite him into our minds almost. And spend 2.5 hours with him. Although back in the day it was a lot longer than that. But we listen to him. We follow his train of thought. We have some sort of feels like a personal connection. I felt the same way listening to Scully for a long time as well. It's a weird, different, beautiful relationship. I think that happens just by spending a bunch of time listening to somebody talk about something that you love.
Something that he did love to do, and when you look at his career, there's been a lot of talk about his consecutive games called, and that spanned over thousands of games. So many games. What does that say about his work ethic and his love for the game and the sport?
Well, obviously, tremendous love for the game, tremendous love for the Yankees. But what stands out most to me when you say that is just his professionalism, day in and day out. Everybody has a job to do, and every time we have to do it, we're not always in the best mood. There are a lot of different uncontrollable things that happens in our lives that affect us as human beings on a day-to-day basis. But John had a certain level of responsibility and respect for that to put out for the Yankees fans, put out for the Yankees every single day, and make it like a magical experience, make it something to tune into and listen to every single day. And it's a really kind of a selfless act, I think, all in all, right? Because he makes it about other people, and he shows up for other people every single day.
You said magical experience. Some of those calls were magical. You're a pitcher, but some of your teammates in there, when they heard their home run call for the first time, what's some of the feedback and the reaction that you witnessed?
There's anticipation to, especially young guys, to see what he would come up with. He was so good at it for so long. My personal favorite is Burn, Baby, Burn. That one got me fired up. So I think that's one thing we'll very much miss. The little idiosyncrasies, the extra knowledge that he would bring, the little tidbits, and just the charisma.
as you said, the relationship is unique in that, like, we feel like we know the person, right? Because we're inviting them into
Yeah.
our locker rooms. But what was he like when he wasn't in the booth?
Just like I said, very genuine. Truly a fan of the Yankees, truly a fan of players. Always positive. Would check in with you on the way to the back of the plane as he passed us. Nice game. That was really fun to see. And when you have someone that's been doing it for so long and seen so much baseball and has his Rolodex of things that he can compare, your performance that day to, you get a compliment from somebody like that, and to know that it's genuine and that you genuinely enjoyed watching you play that day. It's like, I mean, who doesn't love that? That's a very, very special, very special thing. And like I said, just really genuine and personable in that regard.
It's kind of tough to put into words because John meant so much to us as Yankee fans. I think also baseball fans, just the way he described the game, just the beauty he brought to it. Obviously he's on the radio. You're not seeing the action, so he's using his words to describe every single moment, every big play, every bad play, and just the way he went about it. Like, fans, all around the country are going to remember his voice, especially on a lot of the big calls we've had over, the past couple of years, the big Yankee playoff moment, World Series moments. So I'm just going to remember he brought that New York theater to the ballpark, I think is the best way to describe it. He just brought such enthusiasm. He was almost a kid up there in the broadcast talking about the game, him and Suzyn going back and forth. It was just, I saw my parents, especially my mom, she listened to a lot of the games and she was working in the yard. She had John and Suzyn on in the yard listening. So, I'm just going to remember how he painted the game for all us Yankee fans.
Do you go back and ever listen much to his calls of your home runs?
Yeah, no, definitely. I went back, especially today, and listened to his call on 62, just the way he described it, talking about Yankee right fielders, Maris, Ruth, Judge, is just incredible, and even a lighter moment when he gets hit on a foul ball, how he's able to play that off so well, and it was incredible. Some people might get hit by a foul ball and they're kind of like, hey, like, mute me for a second here while I get through this, but he just, just the way he did it, the fans were there with him in the booth, and he wanted to be in, wherever you're in the car listening, at home listening, he was there with you. So it's, I definitely go back and listen to some of the home run calls. If it's Gio Urshela, what a fine fellow. Like, he had some good ones over the years.
You look at your home. You guys talk about that in the clubhouse at all? Like, what's the home run call going to be, or did you hear the home run call? What guys ever talk about that?
Especially new guys. When we had a new guy, we had to trade it for a new guy at the deadline, or if a new young rookie got called up, we're like, okay, like let's make a little bet here and see what kind of call he's going to have for the guys. So he always came up with it. He was always, it didn't matter if we just traded for the guy in the first day and he hit a home run. Like Rizzo. When Rizzo, we traded for him, and that first day hits a homer, man, he was ready to go for Rizzo. So it's just impressive. His creativity. Like I said, he brought this game to life with the radio.